The death of Sukuna is something that many were probably never expecting to actually come to pass here, and yet we stand at chapter 268 with the death of Sukuna apparently happening, or do we?
Sometimes you gotta close the door to open a window.
This chapter gives us a fair amount, but not quite as much as what we'd have liked. And I want to talk about the chapter as a whole, what I enjoyed and what I didn't like. And this video will be slightly different, I kind of think. I'm not sure. But regardless, I hope you all enjoy it. And, you know, like and subscribe, all that good shit. And let's just get into it. Because this chapter opens up with Megumi and Sukuna talking. Or more rather, Sukuna making a desperate attempt to manipulate Megumi into faltering in the final hurdle after Megumi found a second resolve to live as a result of Yuji reaching out to him in chapter 266. And a little detail that I noticed here was in 266 and 268, both chapters open with the same composition of Megumi talking to either Sukuna or Yuji, but later on in 268, Yuji hits Sukuna with the "You are me, Sukuna," and I'm just going to dive into this a little bit later here, but Sukuna basically tells Megumi, just how do you think you'll be able to go on? You had your body stolen by me, you murdered your own sister, you turned away the hand that reached out to you, and the brat that you even saved ended up slaughtering thousands, referring to Yuji all the way back in Shibuya. And I think one of the most interesting parts for me here in this little dialogue is that Sukuna frames all of this. He frames all of these actions as if he was never involved, as if he had no accountability in them, or he held no weight in them at all. And Sukuna genuinely, truly believes himself to be some sort of force of nature. And to be honest with you, he kind of is, to be honest with you. And I've seen a lot of comparisons to Muzan and Sukuna, and while there is definitely some similarities in their characters here, I think ultimately the execution is very, very different, but that's a video for a different day. But Megumi asks Sukuna, why do you sound so desperate? Is it because there is only one left? Only one of your fingers? Now these words sent my spider senses tingling, because Megumi mentions how there is a special way that Sukuna turns himself into a cursed object, which we already know. This is backed up and confirmed by Angel that Kenjaku helped him. Plus, Megumi mentions how the resonance isn't all that good news for Sukuna either, meaning that once these 19 fingers disappear and they don't have a body to hold onto, the lone finger that remains won't be enough to support and connect to Sukuna's soul. Now, something about Sukuna's apparent death here makes me wonder, is that true? Because we're all very aware how proficient Sukuna is in terms of Jujutsu, and how he only needs to be shown once how to turn himself into a cursed object, and how he was able to do it again from switching from Yuji to Megumi. And in my journey of researching the soul within Jujutsu Kaisen, I found that Gege was extremely meticulous about the details of the soul in a way that it is all connected. Now, if you want to check out this mind map that I made, I will leave a link in the description. It is an ongoing and growing mind map with more details being added to it. But I want to use Toji as an example here, because Toji was someone with only the smallest bit of flesh. And Toji was able to take over a body with his soul simply because his body was, as he puts it, special. And he says, this guy's body lost to my soul. Now, Sukuna just also so happens to have a special body. This is particularly pointed out when he transforms from his normal Megumi form into his High and Era form, and he also tells Yuji not to underestimate him. So my point being here is that I believe Sukuna may not be entirely dead. The fact that Gege leaves it sort of ambiguous, and we don't know whether Yuji eats the remains or whether they fully fade away. I think it's possible that Gege maybe explores that later, but however, the evidence right now pointing to him fully fading away and not being eaten by Yuji is that Yuji doesn't have the markings on his face. So you could argue that Yuji didn't eat him, but I'll pass that question off to you guys in the comments below. What do you think? Do you think Sukuna fully faded away here, or do you think he stayed? But we cut back to the real world now, and we see Yuji punching Megumi's body away from Sukuna, and we see the arms of Sukuna right here disconnecting from Megumi's body. And this bottom panel is almost framed as if it's the perspective of Sukuna being dragged from the body, which is interesting. But we finally get to see this true form of Sukuna, this formless form. And I mentioned in the previous video how this sequence reminded me heavily of not only Sukuna's domain, the way the mouth looks, but also reminded me heavily of Mahito's body repel, which he used against Yuji in Shibuya. And I think it's fitting, and again feels like the cycle of JJK, especially considering what Yuji says to Sukuna. But this form also reminded me a lot of Parasite and also Akira, old school classic right there, where Tetsuo loses control of his body, especially for the way he's like reaching for the body. Also, shout out Akira, by the way. The Akira soundtrack was so fucking gas. Also, shout out to the folks who've been supporting the Twitch channel. I've been streaming over there, or doing art streams, colouring manga panels and doing vibes and just chilling. So go follow the Twitch channel if you're into that kind of thing. Anyway, we're given perhaps what is my favourite panel within the story, and it's Yuji Itadori standing over Sukuna's form, looking down on him, as Sukuna is filled with equal parts rage and panic, in my opinion. And he asks Sukuna, what's it gonna be? which is a direct callback to Yuji giving Sukuna the ultimatum to return to Yuji's body and he'll spare his life. But one of my favourite details here is that it's the neutral expression of Yuji's face. When you contrast his face here with how he looked when he stood over Mahito, there's an eeriness about it, and even though Gege is directly trying to parallel the two scenes, it's kind of like the same but different. And this is where we come full circle with Yuji telling Sukuna, "You are me." And this sequence for me, it was something that was truly beautiful. I love this sequence. This scene perfectly encompasses Yuji's character arc and his growth throughout the series. He's gone from a man possessed, determined to die with Sukuna and willing to throw away his own life in order to save everyone and get rid of Sukuna, to recognizing his worth as a human and recognizing that his life matters not only to himself but to others around him. And to echo his grandpa's words here, he tells Yuji not to be like him, and when he dies, to die surrounded by people he loves. And with how it looks, we might just actually get that ending for Yuji. He might not die alone like what Gojo always said to Megumi here. And this is where my skepticism about Sukuna's death comes in though, because Yuji offers Sukuna a chance at life. He says to exist with him, to give him another chance here. And I could see a point here where Yuji takes away that choice from him. Like, he's gave him that choice, but he could also take it away from him, and instead he could just eat the remains and force Sukuna to watch from the prison that is Yuji, as Yuji lives a somewhat normal life with the people that he loves. And I think that for Sukuna would be worse than death for Sukuna, in my opinion. But Sukuna says to Yuji how he's impressed that he's going to take this farce so far, and even calls him by his name and tells him, "Do not underestimate me, I am a curse." Now, first of all, Sukuna calling Yuji by his name was beautiful, like genuinely beautiful. Sukuna finally recognizing Yuji meant something to me, like that shit differently. And even if they don't like each other, they recognize each other as like warriors, as fighters, and that shit, it just, that hits different. But another detail here that I noticed was that Yuji, as he's holding Sukuna in his hands, the hands that held the King of Curses as he's dying were reminiscent of both humans and curses. And I thought that this was kind of poetic because Sukuna all along has thought of himself as a bigger and higher being than both humans and curses. And we see this particularly in the Shibuya arc with his conversation with Jogo, where he says, humans and curses flocking together, comparing themselves to those around him. It leads to weakness and it stunts their growth. But ironically, those same humans who flock together, and in particular a human with the traits of a curse, now holds Sukuna's life in his hands, and I think it's just genuinely beautiful. There's a video that I want to make a little bit later down the line here, diving deeper into that subject, but it's just phenomenal. Now that the series is coming to a close, you can see the bigger and broader picture that Gege's painted throughout the series, and it's making my appreciation for the series run a whole lot deeper. However, moving forward into the chapter, we get to the conclusion of Hakari versus Uraume, which I'm just going to say right now, a very valid criticism that you may have and I have for now is how Gege handled this final arc with the fight of these two. Not exploring this fight particularly was, I think, one of Gege's biggest mistakes. I truly believe Hakari and Uraume could have been perfect windows to give us further insight into Sukuna's character and the students as well as themselves. Was it particularly needed for the story? No, absolutely not. But I do believe Uraume was the perfect character to give us more lore and exploration into the characters of both Kenjaku and Sukuna, but alas, that is just not what we got. However, we can determine that Hakari was the winner based on two facts. One, Uraume had a perfect cut on her neck that she'd frozen over, and two, she just chose to give up. So somehow, somewhere along the line, Hakari managed, what it looks like, to sever her head. I don't know how he did that. It could be with the train doors, it could be with a new power that he did, the time skip, I don't fucking know. But all of this, it just serves to make me more and more sad that we didn't get to see this fight. And I hope when the anime comes around, I do hope that we get an expanded version of this fight, I can't lie. But Uraume mentions how the only possible explanation for Sukuna's defeat is that he was in an incarnated form. Which, if I'm honest, I'm 50-50 agreeing on here, because on one hand, if Sukuna had his original body, there's a chance he can't finish off Gojo with the World Slash as a result of not having Mahoraga due to the 10 Shadows. But you could also make the argument that eventually he would have probably figured it out. I mean, we saw Sukuna do multiple things throughout this fight, throughout the Shinjuku Showdown, that should be impossible, but because he's fucking Sukuna and he's just that damn proficient, he probably would have arrived at eventually, I think. On the other hand, if he did have his original body, he almost absolutely is guaranteed his victory against the students, because, in my opinion here, the main win condition here for the students was Yuji's soul punches, overall damage to the barrier between his and Megumi's soul, and just basically endurance here. Meaning, resonance, the punches that Yuji has on his hand, probably wouldn't work. The only real way to damage his soul would be through Maki's blade, and even then he probably might just be able to heal it off because it's his own body and he's not combating with Megumi's soul. I don't even know. But either way, I think if Sukuna was in his original body here, they wouldn't have any fingers lying around, so resonance wouldn't even make any difference to the fight. So I am 50-50 on the agreements that Uraume's saying here, but I think it's very situational. I think if he was in his original body against Gojo, I think he loses personally. But what do you guys think in the comments down below? But we get a little bit of a time skip here, and we are shown Megumi, Yuji, and Nobara reunited. Honestly, this shit just feels nice to see, I will say. There are some things that I noticed. One, Yuji's eyes back. Megumi has scars on his face that match where Sukuna's eyes were when he had control over his body. And honestly, there isn't really much to note in the whole interactions here, but in my opinion, it's just more of them catching up and reading Gojo's letters, and both Nobara and Megumi, in which he tells Nobara where her mother is, and she simply just doesn't care. She just scrumbles that letter up and is like, I don't want to know. That's kind of weird that he found that out. I don't really care about that one. But a big plot point was wrapped up of Gojo telling Megumi about his dad, and this is, it happens in the most Gojo way possible, because he wrote in the letter to Megumi, unfortunately, your daddy's dead and buried because I killed the dude. Sorry, with a little Gojo face next to it. And honestly, that I think has to be the most Gojo thing possible, because that nonchalant attitude that he's always had just carries over even from across the grave here, which I think is phenomenal. But Nobara mentions how they've got to leave as it's time to save Akatsu. Now, we're given the reveal that Maki, Inumaki, Kusakabe, and Miwa are all alive. They survived the domain and the fucking furnace attack from Sukuna. And they're joined with Panda and Broom Bitch, whose name I genuinely keep forgetting. And yeah, I'm just going to call her Broom Bitch now. But as they're all walking toward the room with an unknown voice screaming, Yuta, you son of a bitch. Now, I've seen a lot of theories about this, and I believe that this may be Rika crashing out, holding Yuta's body hostage, and not letting anyone get close to him to help him, because the last time we see Rika, she is literally cradling his body. Now, it's the way that the text's framed that makes me believe that is Rika, but it could be anyone. I've seen theories floating around that it could be Yuta's sister, because he does have a sister there that was mentioned way back when, but I guess we'll know in a week's time, because we are on a break, and then we have the final 3 chapters left. Now, yeah, what a journey. What a fucking story so far. But that is everything from me. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitch, and Twitter. Those really help me out. Those are all in the description down below. And as always, much fucking love, big fucking kisses, peace.